Some people were frightened as they screamed and asked if their leader was okay. The protagonist seemed to be in bad shape while a team member told him to open his eyes. After hearing that, he woke up with a pained expression, asking what had happened to the subjugation. One of the men had tears streaming down his face. Then he said the subjugation had been a success and that they had managed to defeat the final boss. Our hero smiled and said they really had accomplished it. Thinking that this creature was far superior to all others, it took 3 years to capture it, with hundreds of people losing their lives along the way. The protagonist's companion said he shouldn't close his eyes, while the girl mentioned that the medical team was already arriving. Our MC wondered if his friends thought he was a fool, saying that half of his body was already completely gone. He then looked at the crying girl and told her to gather the rest of their team. And after that, everyone could finally move on after everything that had happened. Heading to another world, he said he could only apologize at that moment. The protagonist had been the first hunter in Korea and the person who established the hunter's system, but he met his end with the last boss that existed in the dungeons. Elsewhere, someone slapped a boy on the head. Those people were several boys trying to bully him, so a red-haired teenager asked if his classmate really hadn't bought them the snack. Surrounding the boy, they said his friend had to be joking. However, the one being bullied was our hero, and he thought those kids had made him their lackey in his previous life. The protagonist remembered falling, wondering if he had truly been eliminated since he couldn't move. A voice said that humanity could now belong to its race since Junwoo had been eliminated and no one was left to stop them. While falling, the MC told the voice to stop talking nonsense because there were still plenty of hunters to defeat the monsters. He continued by saying they had learned everything about those creatures and built various weapons to prepare for the final battle, and there would be even stronger hunters. The voice said the system he created wasn't bad and that it would return in 40 years, and upon hearing that, our hero asked it to repeat what it had said. That being said, that when it returned, it hoped humanity would truly have many resources to fight against its race. The MC replied that when that happened, the monster would be nothing more than a cockroach compared to humankind. And in another place, he opened his eyes. The boy was somewhat confused and wondered if he was in a hospital. He said he had forgotten many things and couldn't remember something important, but he knew that just moments before, he had been fighting the final boss called Gigantiana. Looking at himself in the mirror, our hero asked whose face that was. Taking the mirror in his hands, the protagonist wondered if he had turned back into a teenager, but said it was impossible because that face didn't resemble his at all. He said he would need to gather as much information as possible to figure out where he was. In another place, a man accompanied by a doctor said the boy had finally woken up. This person approached, saying he was a police officer and was there to ask our hero some questions. The officer gave the MC's information, but he replied by saying he had actually been born in 1975. After hearing that, the man and the doctor looked confused, wondering if the boy was out of his mind. He asked if the boy could remember what happened before the accident. Our hero said he could only remember that he had taken a lot of damage while fighting monsters in Gigantiana. The officer asked the doctor if Junwoo was insane, but the doctor said the boy needed more rest before being questioned again. However, he keeps asking if that boy really thought he was the hunter Junwoo, and the doctor says it's normal for someone to see illusions after an accident. Our MC asked what situation he was in, and upon hearing that, the man realized the boy couldn't remember anything. Then he says that on the previous day, the protagonist had been ambushed by Banksini, but since it was very early in the morning, there were no witnesses. He asks if the boy really couldn't remember anything that had happened, but our MC doesn't answer. The policeman sighs and, placing his hands on his shirt, says he understands the situation. Handing a card to Junwoo, he says that if he remembers anything, he can call him. Leaving the room, the doctor says the protagonist should rest, but before he goes, our MC says he needs something. A bit confused, the doctor asks what the boy wants, and the protagonist asks the man to tell him what year it is. Answering our hero's question, he says it is the year 2051, and after hearing this, the MC is shocked. Trying to stand, the boy says that this could only be a lie. In the next moment, he opens the curtains of his room while thinking he must have misheard. He says that Seoul was a ghost city that ended up like that because of battles against monsters. That was where the homeless stayed with the refugees, suffering all kinds of mistreatment, and he says he can't believe it has changed so much. Looking around, he can see several buildings all over the city, and families enjoying themselves with their children, wearing happy expressions. With tears streaming down his face, our MC says that with this view, he believes his comrades did a good job. While still watching, he wonders if his friends are still alive, and since 42 years have already passed, they're probably together by now. However, in the next moment, he realizes that all those years have passed and has a shocked expression. He says to himself that 42 years have gone by, and according to that voice, it wouldn't be long before the monsters appear again. But suddenly, the entire building began to tremble. The megaphone started announcing that there was a serious crisis in the hospital, and upon hearing that, the protagonist became alarmed and wondered what was happening. Somewhere else, a portal appeared and many people fled in fear while someone shouted to call the Hunters Association. Our hero started running out of the hospital, while thinking he could see how much monster subjugation had improved after 42 years, and arrived where many people were gathered. After observing what was happening, he was surprised and wondered what was going on with those people that made them stand in front of the portal. A soldier was saying that a hunter would take part and everyone should stay away from the portal so they wouldn't get hurt, because in 10 minutes they would lure the monster out of the dungeon. And hearing this, the MC got angry while wondering why. He remembers asking his companions if they understood what he said and says he will repeat it. The MC says that when the monster leaves the dungeon, the hunters lose control of the area, and it's common for the city to be wiped out when that happens. And for that reason, subjugation should happen inside the dungeon, and that was a rule that could never be broken. Then he asks if they understood, and the men say they won't forget it. In the present, the protagonist was moving through the people while saying the guards were crazy. A reporter was asking if they were ready to start broadcasting. But before they begin, the MC asks what they think they're doing. He was questioning why they were letting the monsters out of the dungeon, because monsters aren't children's playthings and it made no sense. However, before he could finish speaking, people began to applaud and cheer for the arrival of a huntress. There were some guards in front of a car. Someone started getting out of it while everyone applauded. The woman's name was Go Eun-chae, and after she arrived, the journalists started taking lots of pictures. Our hero was surprised and wondered if she was a modern-era hunter. Since she was very young, he couldn't tell what her abilities were. The girl who appeared began to walk toward the portal, and a light appeared on her wrist as she activated something. The system window said that permission was granted and the use of B-grade abilities was activated. A guard shouted that monsters were coming out of the dungeon. A creature crackling with lightning across its body appeared and stood in front of the woman. An ice-based ability began to manifest on the girl's sword. The monster then charged toward her, but without any difficulty, the woman managed to dodge, and she attacked the monster with her sword, successfully striking it. Some girls were watching, and one of them said it was amazing, while another mentioned that Go Eun-chae looked like she was dancing as she fought. A boy pointed at her and said that when he grew up, he would also become a hunter who protected people. And our MC was observing the situation with an awkward smile. Returning to the fight, the girl took a leap. She then rushed toward the monster, which was also attacking her. She launched several ice spikes at the creature. All her strikes hit the werewolf's body. With those attacks, the monster was defeated. People were very impressed and started shouting her name multiple times. Seeing this, the protagonist began to laugh. However, with an indignant expression, he said it shouldn't be like that, and asked if that was what she called the subjugation. Our MC thought everything had turned into a mess, because a novice hunter was acting like a celebrity, relying only on her abilities to fight, and the support was truly ridiculous since it didn't even back up the main attacker. He believed the worst part of it all was what she had just done, since she performed a subjugation in a real-life situation with many variables and numerous civilians around. And in the next moment, our MC kicked the camera that was filming. One of the guards got angry and asked what the boy thought he was doing, and the protagonist questioned whether they were crazy to bring monsters out of the dungeon and fight them where there were civilians. Because if a monster leaves the dungeon, it can adapt to that environment and go berserk. And after hearing this, the man looked confused. While our MC kept talking about various issues, people were recording and asking if he wasn't just a student. He continued by saying that the support was terrible, and after hearing this, the guys got irritated. The protagonist asked if they really thought this was a subjugation since it looked more like a street performance. However, the girl asked if he was from the academy and said that what she had shown was everything they had learned in class. She then said our hero was very energetic but shouldn't think everything was taught by the instructors, because the battlefield was very different from the rumors he had heard, and the MC asked if she really called that a battlefield. With a menacing look, he questioned how she dared say such things in front of him. After seeing the MC's gaze, the girl looked frightened. But before he could continue speaking, the guards surrounded him, saying he couldn't act that way. The MC didn't care and asked if her name was Go Eun-chae. He said that if she continued with that skill level, she should be ashamed to call herself a hunter. However, the girl merely said to herself that it felt like school, and it was difficult. After hearing that, the protagonist was a bit confused. Elsewhere, he was sighing as he remembered the voice saying it would return in 42 years. Recalling that, he said that if things continued like this, everything would be over, because the hunters were weaker than just any monster, and he needed to prepare for the calamity. But in the next moment, he said there was still a chance, because his group might still be alive, and if he managed to contact them, he could do something. Yet he wondered how he could find them, as he couldn't just ask around randomly. The boy said he still had a shot, because the girl from earlier mentioned an academy for hunters, and that meant someone must have created that institute in the last 30 years, and only that person could have done it. Our hero remembered asking his friend if he really wanted to create a school, and his companion said that was exactly it. because if the war ended, he wanted to build an academy to look after the next generation. He also said Junwoo should choose the name, and upon hearing that, the protagonist asked if he really should do it. With a calm expression, he said the academy could be called Korea Hunters College. The man replied that the name was too simple and wouldn't attract any attention. In the present, our MC was in front of a school, while wondering if his companion had really given it that name, and he says that this school was quite large. Someone asks what the protagonist was doing there, and questions whether he was a student since they had never seen him at that school, and our MC says it's none of that, and that he's only looking for someone. After hearing this, the old man says that if the boy came looking for Yunchae, he should leave, and the protagonist says that wasn't the case either. Then he asks if the guard knew someone named Bae Wushik, and upon hearing that, the man became confused. Then he questions whether the protagonist was talking about his boss, and the MC says that's exactly right, and that he'd like to meet the owner. The old man says that someone who wasn't a student couldn't see the director, and asks whether the boy was a special admission student, and the protagonist gets confused after hearing this. Our MC thinks he didn't know what that meant, but says he really was a special student, and the guard says that if that's the case, he should follow him. The protagonist wonders why the guard looked at him as if he felt sorry for him. The two enter the building, and after a few minutes, our hero is startled by something. The reason was that there was a portrait of his old body inside the room, and seeing it, the boy asks why it was there. The guard says the protagonist should stop yelling in the school, and upon hearing this, the MC apologizes. However, he blushes as he wonders why his friend put a giant portrait of him at the entrance. While the two were walking, they found several pictures scattered all over the wall of the place, and there was one that said that Hunter Junwoo had stated that adventurers were made of 99% willpower and 1% talent. After seeing this, our MC wondered whether he had really said something like that since he didn't remember. A few seconds later, they reach the director's office, and the guard knocks on the door. He apologizes and says that a boy would like to speak with his boss. A man says they can both come in, and before the protagonist meets the school director, the guard says that our MC shouldn't do anything foolish. After they enter, the guard says that the special student who was transferred has arrived, and upon hearing this, the man was confused because he didn't remember any special student entering this year. The guard says that the two can talk, and that he'll go do his job. So after he leaves, the protagonist has a serious expression while looking at Wushik. The director was walking toward our MC while saying that this situation was quite strange. With a serious expression, he says he hasn't heard of any special student who passed the admission process, and asks who the boy in front of him is, and says that if he can't explain what he was doing there, the boy would be punished. However, the MC doesn't care and only asks how his friend is doing. The man was confused by what he heard since he didn't know this person. The protagonist continues and says he almost didn't recognize his friend since he looked like an old man, and asks whether Wushik can recognize him, saying his name is Junwoo. The man was confused as he said that in his whole life, he had never seen someone so crazy, and he went to pick up a phone. He called the guard and said that the boy who was there needed to be removed since they shouldn't let a random person into his office. But in the next moment, the protagonist asked where Sun Yang was. He asks how the MC knows that name, and the prota says that one chick used to chase after this woman and was always rejected, so there's no way he could forget. Then he asks if his friend managed to marry her, and after hearing this, the director ran toward the protagonist. In the next moment, he grabbed Junwoo by the collar and shouted, asking who the hell the protagonist was and why he was saying those things. Our hero starts laughing and says he never imagined Wushik would grab him. And with an irritated expression, he says that a school director was really quite daring. After seeing this, the man stopped holding the protagonist and looked shocked. The protagonist began to dust off his shirt and says that he had told his friend many times before that even if he were in front of the greatest monsters or the most powerful people he met, he should take control properly so that his target couldn't escape. And after hearing that, the director was frightened and asked if our boy was his leader. Some years ago at the subjugation management headquarters, someone was shouting while asking what everyone was doing. That person was pointing a blade at a woman's neck while saying they should bring him medicine and food. The MC asked what had happened, and a man said the young guy had been expelled from his base because he had a disease and was now looking for medicine. The protagonist asked if that was true, and the man said they suspected the information was correct because the young man's brother had a disease. Our hero began to think about what to do. Then he started walking toward the person who was holding the woman hostage. Seeing this, his companion wondered what their leader was trying to do. The man shouted loudly that the MC should back off and not come any closer, or the girl would be eliminated. However, our boy didn't care and kept walking. Seeing that, the young man said if the protagonist got any closer, that girl would really be done for, but the MC replied that the man could do whatever he wanted. Hearing that, both of them were confused, while the woman asked if she was hearing things correctly. The protagonist said he was telling the truth since nobody would care if she was eliminated, given there were plenty of monsters roaming the city. The young man was about to say something, but the MC asked if he didn't have the courage to do it. And he said that if the man wanted the medicine to save his brother, he should try to eliminate everyone there in order to get it. And upon hearing that, the man was surprised. Continuing, he said that to save someone, another person had to be eliminated, as that was how they were living. Whether it was monsters or people made no difference, because if they were going to do something, it had to be done properly. But if he couldn't even manage that, he should stop trying useless things, and just get eliminated alongside his brother. And after hearing that, the man was stunned. In the next moment, the man threw the woman aside and began to advance toward our hero. He tried to strike the protagonist with his blade, but the MC easily dodged. Then he grabbed the man's arm. Without any difficulty, he performed a judo throw. After that throw, the side character cursed, and in the next moment he was slammed to the ground. The man tried to get up with an angry expression and said he would eliminate our boy. Cursing the MC even more, he attempted to slash him again with his blade. With a smile on his face, Jungwoo said that was the spirit, and his system window stated that the user had equipped an item. However, without any difficulty, the protagonist parried the man's attack. Then he put his finger in front of the man's face. The system window said the user would use the skill Explosive Flick, and in the next moment our hero landed a blow, which sent the side character flying, crashing into the wall. The man passed out from the hit he received. Jungwoo called his companion and said they should look for the man's younger sister, as she might be nearby, and he still had medicine for her, but the guy said their leader should reconsider, because the girl had a disease that could be transmitted, but our hero didn't care, since if that were really true, the man would have already been eliminated. He said his companion should go quickly, and upon hearing that, the young man went to do what the protagonist ordered. The MC said his friends should take that person to their base and give him food. Wushik was about to ask something, but our hero said that was exactly it, because from that moment on, they were all companions and part of the same team. In the present, the protagonist's friend was asking if he really was that person, because he looked like a child, and upon hearing that, the MC said he also had no idea what had happened and had just woken up in that body. And the director kept observing our hero, who felt a bit embarrassed. Jungwoo said his friend seemed not to believe any of it. The man said that was obvious because no one would believe that someone who was eliminated would come back looking like a child. The MC said it would be better to tell him what happened the first time they went hunting. And after hearing this, Wushik punched the protagonist. Elsewhere, the guard was running toward the director's office. The reason was that Wushik had called him, saying the guard should remove the boy from his office. The admission of special students was something that brought talented people to the school, which was why he thought the boy was one of the chosen. At the director's office door, he said he was there to apologize. While entering, someone shouts that his friend should stay focused. Basically, our hero was making Wushik practice apologizing. After seeing this, the guard wondered what was going on and then began to leave the room after witnessing it. The protagonist was shouting as he said that his friend should keep doing it and couldn't stop. A few minutes later, the MC had an irritated expression. Wushik looked a little embarrassed. The protagonist says that his face hurts, and the director apologizes for hitting his friend, saying he only did it because he mentioned his first mission. Our MC says the world had changed a lot, and the director agrees, saying it might seem strange to his friend. The protagonist says that it's obvious since even monster subjugation has become terrible, because one day ago, he saw hunters bringing a monster out of the dungeon, and Wushik asks if he was talking about the dungeon near the hospital. He says he already knew what his friend was thinking, and our boy asks why they're doing these things. The man says that after their leader sacrificed himself on the last mission, the world became very peaceful, and powerful monsters almost never appeared, and our hero asks if that was why they were bringing monsters into the streets. The MC yells that there's a limit to how reckless people can be, and the director says there were other reasons as well. Because there was no danger, it was hard to get sponsorship from big companies, which is why they had to do all these things. And now the hunters were becoming celebrities, and the way subjugations were handled before had changed. Our boy says that it's not too late to change all this nonsense, and he says that since his friend was the director of the Hunters Academy, he could change these things, but the man says he already mentioned it once. And he says that because high-ranking people were involved, he couldn't change the educational system by himself. The MC says that if they reunited with their companions, they might be able to do something, but the director says that the other members were the high-ranking people. And even though he hated to say it, there would be several members of his team who wouldn't be happy about the protagonist's return. The MC asks if his friend thought so too, and the director is surprised and says it's not that at all. Our hero sighs and says everything has been a mess since he returned. Wushik says his friend shouldn't think that way because the world was free from attacks, and their leader could start a new life now. However, our boy says that the final boss would be revived. After hearing this, the director is a bit confused. Then he asks our hero to repeat himself, and the protagonist repeats that the final monster would return. Wushik was confused and asked if Gigantiana would really return, and the protagonist says that's exactly it, and even if he didn't want to believe it, that was the reality, because when he was about to be eliminated, he heard a voice saying the final boss would return in 42 years. Wushik says that can't be true and asks if his friend misheard. The MC asks if his friend didn't believe him, since he had seen someone return after 42 years, but didn't believe the most powerful creature could return, and the director feels awkward. Our hero says he's leaving because it no longer made sense to stay there, and the man asks what his friend planned to do. The protagonist says it's obvious. He would do as before and handle everything alone. Wushik says his leader wouldn't be able to do anything with the body he has now, and the MC says he's already done it once and would do it again. But before leaving, the protagonist says there's one more thing he has to say. Then he asks where his sword is, since it would be complicated to do everything alone without it. Wushik says it's in storage, and because it's a valuable item, it can't be taken out, and the MC asks if he can't get his items. The director says that the person in charge there is Seokdu, and the protagonist is glad that his companion got that position. That was perfect, because he always obeyed his orders and was very loyal. Wushik says that Seokdu was one of the people who would be angriest about the protagonist's return. The MC says that nothing was really working out, and the man replies that there was still an alternative because Seokdu's granddaughter studied at the school. He had heard that the chairman loved his granddaughter very much and couldn't say no to her. Our boy asks if he really had a granddaughter. Then he asks if he should really get close to her to solve these problems, and the man says it would be easier that way. Our hero says it would be better to do that and asks for her name. The director says the girl's name is Go Eunchae, and that the MC probably met her in the collapsed dungeon near the hospital, and upon hearing this, Junwoo says it could only be a joke. He asks if the girl really is Seokdu's granddaughter, and the man replies that's exactly the case, asking if there was any problem. The MC says he was very angry after seeing the subjugation on a street and ended up fighting with her, and upon hearing that, the director is surprised. Wushik asks if his friend hadn't hurt anyone, and the MC says he obviously wouldn't do that. He had just said a few things because he was angry and then left. He then thinks about what he said and how she defeated the monster, and he shouts that he has no idea what to do at this moment. Our hero places his hands in front of Wushik. Seeing that, Wushik is confused and wonders what his friend is planning to do. He asks if Junwoo needs something, and our hero says he wants the academy enrollment form. Hearing this, the man is very surprised and asks if that's really true. The protagonist tells his friend to just give it to him because his weapon is in someone else's hands, and to get it back, he will approach Seokdu's granddaughter. Wushik says that's not the problem because the MC is too old, and upon hearing that, the protagonist asks what he means by that. The man asks if the protagonist really intends to enroll at his age, and hearing that, the protagonist is shocked. The director says a lot of things to our hero, and upon hearing them, our boy gets irritated. He says he's not there to make friends and only wants to recover his weapon, and upon hearing this, Wushik sighs. He says their leader is still the same, so the protagonist says that's obvious, and that's why he was eliminated before everyone else. In the next moment, the director hands the admission card to our hero. He says the MC shouldn't be too hard on the kids, and the MC says he wouldn't because he's not that kind of person. Wushik says our hero shouldn't hurt them because they're young, and the protagonist says he'll decide that in the moment. The man says he's not joking because those kids are very weak, and the MC yells that he already got it. The next day, inside the academy, someone was looking for their classroom. That person was the protagonist, and he was thinking that now that he was joining a class, he felt nervous. He tells himself that he shouldn't draw too much attention while searching for Go Eunchae. However, someone asks the protagonist what he's doing, standing in front of the classroom. That person is a girl, and she says that if he's not going to enter, he should move away from the door because he's in the way. The MC apologizes and says he's already going in, but for some unknown reason, the girl moves closer to the protagonist's face, and seeing that, he feels awkward. She asks if, by any chance, our boy is the dog from yesterday. Hearing that, the protagonist is confused. Entering the room, she says she didn't expect the transfer student to be someone like him. But it doesn't matter much because it has nothing to do with her, though the MC asks why she's calling him a dog. She doesn't answer, and the protagonist is even more confused because she said that and then left. He thinks that kids nowadays are really more complicated to deal with. After entering the classroom, he felt many eyes on him. That was because all the students were looking at our big guy. A group of boys was talking among themselves, wondering if the person who entered the room wasn't the dog from the day before. Even some girls were saying the same thing about the protagonist. Realizing this, the MC asks himself what's going on because it's his first day of school, yet everyone is staring at him. But he thinks it would be better to ignore all of it, and tells himself he thought the academy would be different because nobody had his item. Our hero was looking for a place to sit, but he was surprised by something. The reason was that there was a bouquet of flowers on his desk with a message from Wushik congratulating the MC. Seeing this, he feels a bit confused and wonders if they really give these out when students arrive. And sitting down, he says it was just a waste of money. In the next moment, he was slightly startled because someone was making a lot of noise. The reason was that someone was shouting while criticizing their teacher. This person was a boy who was complaining that his teacher forced him to go to school. After this person arrived in the classroom, all the students became afraid. Our hero was thinking that kids really hadn't changed and continued to act like they were the best. And after noticing that the hero was there, the boy was surprised. Then he smiled, thinking a new friend had arrived. He began to approach while saying he couldn't believe the protagonist was in his class, because the dog from the previous day had shown up in his room, and he didn't expect the MC to be there since he had messed with Go Eunchae and spoken poorly of hunters. Our hero was surprised and asked how the boy knew these things. He says that the MC's video was everywhere, and the protagonist thinks he doesn't know anything about that. And giving a slap to the protagonist, the boy says he couldn't believe that even after saying those things, he managed to get into the academy. He says the MC was crazy because he was only an E rank and had caused trouble with Eunchae, but the protagonist was starting to get annoyed. The boy puts his hand in front of our hero and says it's a pleasure to meet him, and says his name is Jusuk, and probably our boy already knows him. The protagonist had an irritated expression as he remembered Wushik saying his friend should endure the insult. Then, in the next moment, our boy also extends his hand and says his own name. After hearing this, Jusuk starts laughing while saying that the MC's parents must have been fools for giving him the name of a famous hunter. Our MC was laughing on the outside, but he was telling himself he had to hold back and not hit that kid. The boy asks what it was like to see Go Eunchae up close. Then he says her figure was amazing and her face was decent for a girl her age. And he starts laughing again, saying that even though she was a director's granddaughter, she couldn't be that arrogant. And if it weren't for those problems and she didn't have such a determined look, she'd be his type. However, someone says that Jusuk shouldn't go too far, and upon hearing this, both the protagonist and the boy were surprised. This person was the girl from before, and the boy asks why she's talking about those things again. The girl says that Jusuk should look in the mirror before commenting on someone else's appearance. After hearing this, he asks if she's lost her mind because previously he let it slide, but now she'd gone too far. But the girl says that the two of them were in Class E, so they were trash. However, the boy says he's not on the same level as her since he used to be in Class B, and she says it doesn't matter because he doesn't know how to use his own abilities. And for him to still be in school, his father's connections must be incredible, because if not for that, he would have already been expelled. And after hearing this, Jusuk becomes angry. Then he moved toward the girl to hit her. Noticing this, she closed her eyes in fear. But for some reason, the boy was very surprised. The reason was that he was on the floor. After seeing this, all the students were shocked and wondered how our hero had the courage to do that. Jusuk asked if Meme Junwoo was crazy for doing it. However, our big guy had an indifferent expression as he looked at the boy. Jusuk asks if the protagonist really did that, and our hero says that if the boy wants, he can do it again. But Jusuk just gets up and asks if the MC really wants trouble on his first day of school. Then he shouts that he'll have to beat our hero so he'll understand his place in the school's hierarchy. However, our protagonist doesn't care and just laughs at the boy. And with an irritated expression, the MC asks if the boy has ever been in a critical situation to be talking like that. The boy doesn't care about what the protagonist said and just advances toward him. But without any difficulty, the MC manages to dodge while thinking that this kid's punch was terrible, and the movements he made were pathetic. Even a goblin could take him down. However, before they could continue the fight, someone entered the room and asked what her students were doing. Jusuk gets annoyed, saying that of course, the teacher had to show up right at the moment of his fight. As he leaves, he says he will find the Meme Junwoo later so they can fight, and he tells the protagonist that they should meet behind the school because they were going to do something fun. A few hours later, Wushik had an irritated expression. He then asked how the MC had already gotten into trouble on his first day of school, and upon hearing that, the protagonist said he had been holding back a lot. Wushik says that he had already cleaned up the mess the MC made, but he didn't know what Jusuk would do. And upon hearing that, Junwoo asks what his friend meant. The man explains that the boy the MC hit earlier was the son of the minister of the subjugation department, and that the boy did whatever he wanted, and since his father was an influential person, he never had any problems. Our hero says he now understands how that kid ended up that way, and the director tells the protagonist that he should be more careful, and if the MC tried to fight Jusuk again, there would be nothing he could do, to which the protagonist replies that he understood and would handle it in his own way. Outside the office, our hero sighs. At that moment, the girl from earlier asks why he acted that way, startling the protagonist. She asks if the MC didn't know who he had messed with, but he says he doesn't care since he never liked ill-mannered kids. Then he asks why she was trying to fight the boy, as Jusuk was only talking about Eunchae. but in the next moment he is surprised, and he thinks that the girl standing before him looks very similar to the person he had seen during the subjugation. Looking at a badge on her shirt, he sees the name Go Ah-hyun. He then asks if she is Eunchi's younger sister, and she responds that she is. The MC thinks this is great since he could use this girl, but in the next moment she says she isn't really Eunchi's younger sister. Because they had different mothers, she wasn't considered her father's daughter and wasn't acknowledged as part of the family. After hearing that, our hero feels awkward and asks if she talks to her grandfather. She says they have a great relationship because he was the one who removed her from the family registry. Upon hearing this, all of our boys' hopes were completely crushed. The girl apologizes, saying that since she isn't part of their family, the MC wouldn't get any compensation for helping her, and since he was a new student, he should find someone to rely on instead of being alone at the academy. She says she thought our hero was different from the others, but in reality, he was just like everyone else and only cared about status. The MC replies that she isn't any different either, as she judged him just because he was a special admission student, and that discussing family history and special admissions was ridiculous, especially for kids. However, the girl tells the protagonist to wait, and he will understand what it really means to be a special student at the academy. But he doesn't care about any of that and just keeps walking.